And welcome to My Bloody Website, the show where we talk all things online for small and medium business owners or executives who still refer to their bloody website. I'm one of your hosts, Darryl King.
And I'm Edmund Pelgan.
Hello, Edmund. Good to have you here.
Hey, Darryl. An episode right up your alley today. What are we talking about?
Oh, episode 10, rating your web guy or gal.
Nice.
And it's probably a follow-on. We did rating your SEO. A while back.
I think a lot of people are going to be interested in this one because this is a challenge that they face every day. You know.
Sorry, I was a bit out of focus. I was feeling blurry.
You can't have that.
All right. So we're getting into the business end of 2018 now. We're heading towards the end of the holiday period. We have our Australia Day weekend, and everyone will be absolutely 100% back in the business. So why don't we crack on and
excellent.
This episode over.
So I'm going to start this by asking you a bunch of questions about it because I'm going to step into the shoes of the business owner who needs a new website. It's 2018. My biggest question is, what am I looking for? Because I always see this thing online of people calling themselves web developers and web designers, and you Google web developer and you see one thing and designer, and people use those terms interchangeably. Now, am I doing the right thing by asking a web developer to build my website? Help me out here.
Yeah, that's a good question, Ed. I don't think there's a clear answer because I don't know that everyone necessarily defines themselves properly. And in an ideal world, you'd be able to gauge that if everyone. I remember in our last episode, I believe you spoke about you were looking for someone and you went to lots of websites, and when you got to the one, they told you exactly what they did. So I think the key thing there is finding out what the people do. But in my way of thinking, a designer and a developer are potentially different things.
Right.
So a designer, and there's probably three tiers. There's design, then there's front-end coding or development, and then there's back-end. And so design is what it sounds like. So someone that's a designer is orientated around creating the visual design. And they hopefully will have experience in a number of things, like they'll understand design principles for mobile and conversion optimization and UX and all those things. That's more detailed stuff. But design would work in Photoshop predominantly or Illustrator, somewhere like that, but probably Photoshop. And they would create PSD files from Photoshop.
What's a PSD file?
That's a PSD file is from Photoshop. That's the output file from Photoshop. So if say you went to 99 Designs or somewhere like that and engaged a designer, they would be just a designer. So if you went looking for, I want a website design, right, and you engage someone to do a website design, the expectation I would have is that you would get designs, you would approve the designs, and they might do every page. It might be just a theme design, homepage and general theme, and then they would give you PSD files. So you'd have JPEGs or PNGs of what it looks like, but you get a PSD, which is all the source files for those designs.
So it's not actually a website, right?
No, it's not a website. And then that would go to, which is the lump of people we call developers. Now, there are, and the people that do the development role, the people that do front-end design, so those people would cut what we call cutting the image design, the PSD, into HTML. They're the people that will bring it into, say, WordPress or just create HTML files for us. So that was called cutting a design up.
Mm-hmm.
And they cut it up because they pull out the elements from the thing and they make
all the graphics and stuff.
Yep. Yeah, and line it up in HTML. So in WordPress terms, they'd load it in, get everything lined up, put the theme in. Now, where I differentiate is the back-end developers are the sorts of people that might build plugins or write PHP code or ASP.NET code or other code, Ruby or Java, anything like that. They are back-end coders. So if you have a dynamic website that does a lot of high-level functional stuff, or you want custom plugins on your WordPress site, you would invariably use a back-end developer to do that, what I would call them.
Right.
So some people call them a programmer or a straight developer. So where I think some of the confusion is the front-end developers and back-end developers, both of them quite often do a bit of each other's work. So a front-end developer might hack around a little bit, doing a bit of code. They certainly would need to know JavaScript because a lot of what they do to implement require JavaScript. So they are doing programming work. They're working in HTML code, but there's a substantial difference between someone that is a full-time, programmer versus someone that does HTML coding.
Right. Here's a question that is already sitting in the front of my mind: is the designer and the front end developer. You talk as if they're two separate people, but a lot of times when people get websites built from the local guy or gal here, it's just one person. So can those two roles be fulfilled by a single person?
Yeah, and in the early days they didn't. And like years and years ago, when people first transitioned from graphic design, doing brochures and stuff, so I want to get into the web, or they were doing that and that, they would do the design elements, and then they would hand them off. Now, I would suggest in a lot of cases that's where problems come up, because they apply offline design principles to online without an understanding of the functional elements. And many, many years ago, someone said, "Oh, yeah, you guys are really functional designers. We do design." It was like, yeah,
that's classic.
This was like 20 years ago. Yeah, because our shit works and your shit doesn't work on all these browsers and stuff. Like, you design without the devices in mind. And I think that's really important that you get that now. So quite often you'll get someone that is front end that's learned to do design, or design that's become really strong in front end because they needed to, because that's where they wanted to specialize, but not necessarily. So like in my agency at the moment, we have some people that can do all elements, but I always look for strengths. So I want someone that they are just kick-ass designers that understand the total utility of what we're doing and conversion and all that stuff, but they just specialize in knocking out design. Yeah. And then I have people that know all the little intricacies of, using this widget and WordPress and this effect, and if I put in this and I haven't turned on the SEO plugin beforehand, suddenly the page disappears. Like that can cause a lot of stuff. But there is no reason that a person can't do that. It's whether we're not all experts in everything, and you really have to make a decision about whether you're an expert or a generalist, or
Would I be right in saying that at an entry level website price point, I suppose, is this even an issue? Because you're familiar with, as am I, that a lot of people who sell websites, they start with a web theme, right? So this whole concept of designing it in Photoshop and then cutting it up and building it into WordPress is kind of moot, because they just work with themes, right? So that's
an approach, and that's a low budget approach, or it's a speed approach. I mean, it's one I was okay with, and in the last few years I've moved back away from, because I think.
What are the advantages of the split approach, where you get a designer who focuses on creating that design and then?
Well, I think it actually comes back to planning, and I think the obligation goes back to you, the website owner. And what I mean by that is that buying a theme looks like X, so I can put my colors on it and I can brand it.
Right.
But the theme comes with this structure, this layout. So before I've even thought about my Jennies and my content, I've bought into a layout and a structure and a color, and a way it's going to work. And that probably goes to the point, I think in the last episode I was talking about, everyone gets caught up on the prettiness and the functionality elements rather than what its role is. And, if we're talking about mobile and all the rest of it, does that theme work well for what you want? So the split approach says, I've engineered and planned what I want. Now I need someone to help bring it transition. But not everyone has a budget to spend all that money.
Okay.
Doesn't mean you can't plan up front. That would help you choose your theme. Now, the theme speeds all that up. But so then if you get a theme and you get it and you go, that's working pretty well. Say you put in stuff, but it doesn't quite do everything you want. So it doesn't do everything you want. Then you would get a front-end developer or front-end person to help massage it and extend the theme to do what you want. Now, if you just chose a theme and you had all your content thought out and strategy, you would then also get someone which is sort of that front-end general developer, web developer, would help you implement it if you didn't want to do it. So they would load the theme and put the pages in. So that's where that person fits in really well. Like a programmer can do that too. Like a person that's more suited to it, they have to, because they've needed to. Some people want one person to work with, right? So the program will do it, but they're much more orientated around, there's the plugin working right? Where's the
Yeah.
data going? And then they don't have the aesthetic side. Might not be an expert at color matching and
and to clarify, that back end programmer might be someone who might hook up your website, your e-commerce shopping cart to another third party inventory system or a legacy system or something like that. Correct?
Or an API for something. Yeah. And look, different people, like lots of people have experience across these things. So I think at a general level, if I was putting up a website, that the most complex thing I had was putting some forms on there, and I wanted the forms to also hook to MailChimp. The average definition of a web developer, someone that's a generalist or a couple of people running a small shop, they would be able to handle that. And then, that's what that person in the middle. So I would classify them as kind of that generalist front end person. They do a bit of design, they can do a bit of working with plugins, putting them together, and then they give you that result where, yep, I've got the website, I've followed the path, I've got the theme, I've implemented the content, I know these different plugins will do these different functions, and you've got a site that matches that basic brief.
All right. Is there something that I should be looking for, or are there questions that I should ask my front end designer and my front end web developer to make sure that they're focusing on best practices? That my front end guy is not just or gal is not designing just for pretty, but like you said, for mobile, they're considering all those design elements as they relate to usability, et cetera, et cetera. What kind of things should I be asking?
Well, I guess the first thing is, a lot of people will say sign up for a program having looked at some generalized themes or design ideas, because I'm a message to people going to get a website: do not ask for free design work up front.
Yeah.
Right? So don't ask for it. That's a bad way. Don't do tenders that ask for conceptual designs, because you're just ripping off people's time. So what that means is you look at some previous work and you agree with this designer developer to do a project. In doing that, ask them what theme they might be using. What theme are they thinking of using? Don't be afraid of them using a theme, and get them over the point of being worried about using a third party thing. So hey, I get that you're probably going to use someone else's theme to meet my budget. I get that. What I would like to know now is, I want to see that in a demonstration mode. I want to see what it looks like in mobile mode, because most of these themes are up on places. Now, in asking that question, if the answer is, well, we have our own custom theme, then that's a really important thing to know. Because what you want to know as the business owner is, if it's a custom theme and I don't use that developer in 3 years' time, how supportable is it going to be?
That's a good point, because that actually leads into my next question, is that, the consideration of the tools and the CMSs, the software that they're building my website on for. What problems can happen there? I know WordPress is a very common platform that people build on, and it's open source, meaning it's supposedly free. Should I make sure my web developer is working with this, and are there other systems that I need to be aware of that could lock me in?
I think one of the things for years is we never had we had preferred content management systems, but our approach was always, let's understand the problem and create a solution, like map it out. Here's how we think we'll deliver it. And then once we understand what we're trying to do, then make the recommendation. Which of the content management options or custom programming, whatever it might be, is best going to suit these needs? And so, like quite often someone will come up and you go, yeah, you know what, I would use WordPress for that. Then, this might have stronger data needs that we might have felt didn't quite work at that time. So we might have used Drupal. There was an e-commerce style white label platform that someone wanted us to do. It had a real customized constructor at the shopping cart level. So it was actually for steps. And so and everything that was available online didn't give this guy the result he wanted for his customers. He said, they're really kludgy, they don't work. So we did an experiment up front, some custom programming to make sure that we could do a JavaScript element that would work irrespective of platform to do it. And in getting that right, and that proof of concept, which was paid for, helped us determine what because he answered lots of other questions through that process, that, WordPress wasn't going to work for this. And then, Drupal wasn't going to work, Joomla wasn't going to work. So that approach, if someone just does WordPress, hey, for a lot of people that might be fine, but they're not offering you an open-minded option.
Right.
So you just have to be aware of that. So one of the questions could be, hey, what platforms do you build on? Yep. What content management systems? What if what if it doesn't? What if our option isn't going to work well in that? What other options do you have? What other pathways are there?
Sure.
I mean, most people probably are going to be.
And some of these custom solutions will have ongoing support and maintenance requirements too, and licensing costs, which is something you need to be aware of, right?
Yeah, and I also, our role here isn't to take down or bag other providers. Many years ago, we used to rent tools to people for content before they existed, right? I mean, we got a long time for e-commerce options like Shopify and WooCommerce and all these things were there. We rented out tools of our own, proprietary systems. Now, that was always a problem because they're locked into that. So if the developers are going to offer you a proprietary solution that's theirs, or that they're licensing from someone else that has ongoing costs, you're obviously, how much is it going to cost?
Yep.
How many developers are there that work in this? That's a really, really good question. Because if you go, how many people work in WordPress and WordPress plugins? Large numbers. How many people work in Drupal? Okay, not so many numbers. Joomla used to be huge. I think that market's starting to really shrink away now, but I'm not an expert in those numbers, so don't take it. But if I'm over here, Cold Fusion was a really good example. I remember when Cold Fusion came along, it was going to kick everyone's ass. All these content management options turned up in it. Now, it's probably a pretty hard job to find a pool of Cold Fusion developers or anyone who wants it. So you have to be really careful in that. And there are a lot of tools that are being used, Ruby and other stuff, but they're not the biggest ones in the market. Doesn't mean you shouldn't use them, but you have to ask, what is that? How many people can do it? Can I move this from your support to someone else's? Not saying I am, but let's just say we have a divorce in 3 years' time. Who else, how likely am I going to do it? So there's some research, or they might be honestly be able to tell you, look, it's pretty niche. It's, that's why the cost is only half, blah, 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 whatever. Ongoing license fees, as you said, annual renewal fees. Do I have to have a specific type of hosting for it? Is it going to run on everyday hosting?
Yep.
Or does that mean, and this is something to understand because some systems need big grunt. Magento enterprise stuff requires serious gear. If you've got a 5-product shop, don't go and jump into something that needs a whole Mack truck to deliver it when you can get Shopify or WooCommerce or stuff like that, which would do it, easy and low cost. So I think those are.
And I think, let's be clear, it's not saying that some of these more custom solutions which require ongoing fees and whatnot are bad. It's horses for courses, right? Like you said, you start with understanding what is the business need and what are the tools that are available to deliver it. And if it requires a custom and dedicated solution, even the cost of that may very well be small pickles compared to the upside and benefit that a system like that can deliver, correct?
Absolutely. And if you keep in mind that it's like everything else. You paint your house, every X few years. You do maintenance on stuff. There is still this feeling of like a website is this massive investment when in reality they're not. People spend way more on marketing and shop fit outs and leases for physical premises, way more, like 10, 20 times as much. If, throw it out every 3 years anyway. Like if you think like that, I'm going to throw it away in 3 years anyway. So you know what? If this is going to deliver it, and these guys have been doing stuff really well, which is another question. Show me some of the stuff you've been doing and ask questions just about how would you approach problems. So I do this when I'm doing online interviewing or conversations. I might have 3 conversations happening at one time and I've got, that's a really good answer. And then I'll weave that into a question for someone else. So if you've spoken to one developer and they've given you some answers to stuff you hadn't even thought about, make sure you re-query people you've already spoken to. Say, okay, in this scenario that this happens, how would you handle it? How will my website handle that?
That might be a great thing for our resource list is a bunch of questions that a business owner can ask a web developer or a web person before they engage them.
All right, I'll put that together. So that's really, and look, that's the same thing across all of it. Because if you ask good questions, if you say, how are you going to interface with my point of sale system? Now, front end people that don't have great back end skills are going to go looking for a couple of plugins, talking generalities, and not have experience in that area. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not going to help you solve it. But what happens if there's overruns? What happens if there's problems? Whereas someone that's got a back end arm, so like if you've got people that have multiple people in their staff or in their pool of contractors they use, whatever that might be, have they got people that can program? So if we're talking WordPress, do they have PHP programmers? What if we need a custom plugin to do something? What about if the theme gets awkward to use? How are we going to do that? What's the upgrade path?
Absolutely.
And so do they understand the concept of child themes? And, can I continue to upgrade in WordPress or Joomla or Drupal? Will it keep upgrading or will there be big upgrade costs? And this is probably a really important question to answer or get answers from. For example, Drupal has done some major upgrades over the last half dozen years and really reworked what they've done. And this happens in all systems. But a site that's developed at this point in time relies on modules that go. So if it's WordPress, it's plugins. How many of those things are going to upgrade in the next major reversion? Because some of those developers just don't do the cutover. So can I upgrade the core without it breaking everything about my site? Or how upgradable is all this stuff? Can I upgrade the plugins and the modules without it breaking my site? Or am I going to need you guys to do it? Those are some of those questions. Like, how much of this can I do myself? How much of it am I going to need you? Which is probably a question I get asked occasionally, and I try to explain to people is, I'm investing in this website. Who's going to run it?
Correct.
Who's going to run it? Is it going to be people within your business, or is it going to be the developers and the agencies? Because that will help you gauge the type of development design.
That has massive impacts on cost as well, and which leads me to my next question, which is, and I know everyone will ask this because they'll get a proposal for a website and they'll fall over with sticker shock. Is what is the difference between a website that costs $5,000 and $50,000? I mean, at the end of the day, an owner is thinking, "Hey, it's just a bunch of pages," and maybe this is an issue of education for them. But just explain to our audience what goes into a $50,000 website that's not in a $5,000 website.
That's a good question. I guess it depends on apples and oranges. Things. So typically something with a bigger budget like that is going to be more custom built, but it would start with the level of planning and the amount of production. So what we're saying is most likely with $50,000 job is that a lot of the ancillary work is being done as part of the project. So you might have commissioned content in there, photography and things like that. But it may not be. They may still be third party. Size and scale is going to be part of it. So if I go and so let's use e-commerce as an example. Not everything that you can get off the shelf will work for every business. And I used that example before of this print stamp business where the tool that allowed you to design the stamp on the screen in typical terms off the shelf is very kludgy. It's not easy to use. So a lot of cost goes into building custom stuff that works. But building your own platform all the way through where it does custom experience requires time. So if I want to install WordPress myself, so I do it on my staging server, I can log on, I can set up a base site in under an hour, easy. 35, 40 minutes. I can download it, set it up, put in all the default plugins, the default themes I would set up. I can install WooCommerce. I can have things going. So I have effectively a shop. I don't have design in there and all the rest of it. That has with it a default shopping cart process. Add to cart, check out, blah, blah, blah. It has default language, probably basket or something like that. Mm-hmm. So that works. But if I suddenly go, well, okay, I want to change the language. I want to change the way the card appears on screen when I add stuff to it. That will add a little bit of cost to it. If I want that whole process to not be in WordPress or to be really custom engineered, so I want every product to be, hand placed by the developer. I want the wording done. I want the on-page optimization done. I want to make sure there's enough copy. I want to make sure all the placement of every button is specific to that product, not just generic. Hey, here you go. We're putting 2 products. Here's your base site. Now you load the rest of the content. That's typically what that lower end cost is going to be, right? Now you load it all and you go, this one overlaps a little bit because I put a paragraph this long. And on a larger one, all of that will have been manually engineered. So you would have worked through it. You would have gone through every screen up front, mobile first and desktop, compared them, placed sample content that the content developers were working with, fed back to the content developers, hey, look, we really wanted to work with this user interface, so they would adjust the copy accordingly.
Yep.
So there's a lot of time. Now, you add up an hourly rate and you go, well, an 8-hour day for one developer might have manipulated the car. Two functions of that car. It's 8-hour day, that might be the better part of $1,000 one day's coding.
Yes.
Potentially. Right. Yeah. So it doesn't take much to build up, but it's that customization. We've covered everything from usability to conversion.
Yeah, so it's planning and the level
and a lot of customization and checking it, now I see that on screen. I want to manipulate that. I want to do it, but also really clever choice of photography and manipulation, not just I whack the stock photo up.
Yeah. So I guess the question is, like, for a really big business, let's say Optus or Telstra was rebuilding their website, they would never launch a website without a lot of that pre-planning and design and planning, right? So because it has major financial implications. And I guess then you need to ask yourself, if you're a local plumber and you receive a $20,000 quote, then now you're armed, you're informed to ask these questions and say, okay, I understand that if you were doing X, Y, and Z and doing a lot of this planning, but really all you built me is this small site, then you can start to say, well, hey, should it really cost this much? So I think instinctively people understand. Sorry, I'll let you.
No, I was going to say, I would suggest that the plumber still needs to do the planning up front. And they can do a lot of it themselves. Hey, they can buy a book.
Yes.
But no, they can do a bit of the planning themselves and they understand it. I would suggest on a lot of smaller sites that are going to evolve over time, where you're building the basic foundation, that they should be very clearly able to understand what the value equation is. Yeah. And they shouldn't need to be paying 20, 30 grand for something that there are options available. They should be able to pick fairly carefully. They may want a custom experience. They may want it designed to have its own look and not be just a theme like all the other plumbers that you can tell. But they should be doing that from a perspective of, this is what I want to achieve. This is the language I want to use. Yep. I'm not a copywriter, but I want to appeal to this type of audience. And I want these results, and I want a 24/7 dial on demand thing. If your hot water tank is blown up, you can press this button and it will call through to me. They should think about that up front, because that one bit might cost $1,000. Right? Yeah. The rest might only cost $1,500, but that one bit might cost $1,000. And they have to understand that. I suppose you asked at the beginning, it's just pages and things, but some things take programming, or you have to buy a widget from someone to do. And if you want it to do it and it's got a business value, the cost really is that can I afford to pay it, and will it give the return? But don't get caught up on what it actually. Don't say, a screen, it's just a screen of content. That should just be $10. Go, I want it to look right and represent my business, because they'll go out and get stickers on their trucks and spend a few grand doing that, and they're just vinyl. I just go, that's just vinyl, just stick it on, but it's not. It's design and fit and quality and durability. Well, just because it's text on screen, they should think the
same thing. So if I'm approaching my web guy and gal and I get them to build my site, what other things should I expect from them? What can they do for me? I mean, what do you typically see that ends up being the web guy and gal's job? I'm thinking specifically of hosting, but there must be other things that you must see these requests all the time. What can I expect my web person to be helping with, and what shouldn't I expect them to help with?
Yeah, well, everyone has a different offer too, and because obviously they're all in business as well. I mean, a common thing over the years is that a lot of customers say, I want one person to look after it. And we've all benefited from that. I mean, I used to own a pretty large hosting company. I reckon hosting was part of and we sold that off. But there was always that issue of, you don't have to host with us. You can host with someone else, but this is the benefit of hosting with us. And we were actually the hosting company. But a lot of people resell hosting because they get to make, a margin every month when they're also trying to get hours done and all the rest of it. So it makes sense. The question has to be, though, is who's going to support your website? Mm-hmm. And who's going to support that side of it? Because if you ring your web developer and then they've got to ring the hosting company and then they've got to get back, that's a lot of people in the chain to get something fixed if your website's offline.
Yeah.
And it comes back to that area of specialty. Are they a hosting provider? Do they know all the hosting stuff? Now, a lot of hosting providers don't provide a lot of useful help. Some do, But some will say that you've got to go back to your web developer for that. So there's a real issue there. I would suggest that maybe hosting should be separate to your web developer.
Right.
You want to be in control of it, and you want hosting experts to manage the hosting issues and web to do the other. Sorry, all you developers and designers out there that make money on it. That's my feeling, that I see the negative of it. But from a business person, if they don't want lots of suppliers, then the questions to ask around that are, how long have you been hosting? Let's be honest, who are you using for your hosting, right? Because if your web developer has their own single server stuck in a farm somewhere, I would be inclined that that's bad. If they're reselling HostGators and GoDaddies or whatever, that's better because the infrastructure is large scale.
Yep.
You don't want to be sharing hosting with a whole bunch on one server from someone that's bought that VPS or dedicated box, and they're still relying on someone else to do it. If they don't have their own systems administrator looking after it, then I wouldn't use that myself. If they were reselling someone else's, I'd want to know who it is. That's fine. I want you to look after it. But I also need to know for my long-term protection where it is. Do I like the performance? Because think of this. You've been hosting on, say, GoDaddy or someone like that. You moved to a new web designer. You moved off GoDaddy because you really, really had the shits with the service or whatever. Sorry, GoDaddy. I'm just using hypothetically. Didn't like what they did. You get a new website and this guy, I'll get your hosting. And good, I'll move to them. Checked a couple of the sites, saying good. And they're just using GoDaddy as well. That's the example. You've not fixed that problem that you wanted to fix. So I think you have a right to understand who they're reselling it through.
Yeah.
And it's like telephony companies. They tell you, well, we use the Vodafone network or we use the whatever network. Well, that should be transparent. Hey, if you're a smart business person, you would understand if I'm relying on that web developer to do it, they're making $5 a month or $3 a month off that. They're in business too. They shouldn't be doing these things, using their knowledge to help me. I want the simplicity of one person. So there's both sides of the coin. Feel free to use them, but make sure you understand who they're using and what they're using. And, hosting's super important to speed, performance, and everything else.
Yeah.
I don't want to be on some tiny little network. I want to be in an environment where it's running fast.
All right.
What things are you going to be up for? What pricing? If they're using all their developer level plugins, which happens a lot. Like I have plugins where I buy the developer unlimited site license. What happens if I move away from them? What would be the costs in the future if I needed to get my own licenses because I wanted to get my own support? And then I think you need to understand how your website's going to run. So let's just say you decide you're going to write a blog post once a month. You're going to put up a blog every month. You've got a list of topics. You think that'll work. It's going to help with the ongoing strategies. Who's going to post the blog post? Who's going to format the picture and things like that to go on? Now, if you're going to do that internally, that's fine. So make sure you've got full access, blah, blah, blah. But the other thing then is if you're not going to and you want the web people to do that, then the conversation needs to be, okay, what's your availability? Can we block it in? I need it to go out the same week every month. I want to make it regular. And talk those questions. You should know what their rates are and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that actually leads into a good question I see a lot is I see sites get built and then, they pushed out into the world and there's no discussion about what comes next. And then you're right. The owner will go, hey, I need this blog post up, and they ring up. And this is where web people get frustrated because they get these phone calls in the middle of the night and there's this massive expectation that, hey, you built it, you fix it, or can you upload this? So in terms of ongoing support, what are the expectations on both sides? First of all, what should I be expecting from my developer? And what are the options available for me as a business owner to have them on my team to help me out on an ongoing basis? Because you're right, it's not just a set and forget. This is an ongoing opportunity, right? Your website. So maybe if you can talk about that from a business perspective.
Okay, well, and I think this. A lot of people will go to these third-party sites, the Upworks and the No Designs, and get a site built. The difference between that and using a person, and they're not necessarily in your neighborhood, they could be online as a freelancer or an agency, is that the freelancer and the agency typically are in the business of wanting you as a customer and supporting you. So they might all do it differently. But if you go and get a construction, so it's a bit like getting a new house built. I bought it from this place. I've got a warranty for X many days. But after that, the house developer is not turning up to fix the leaky pipe or to unless it's in the warranty terms, they're not a maintenance guy. Now, the good thing with web stuff is that a lot of the people that you work with do want to do maintenance. So they'll build and they'll help maintain. Good ones will offer you the option. You could do it. We'll be here in the background to support you. You get busy. We'll do whatever you want.
Yep.
Then you've got to set the parameters of realistic expectations. And the reality is there's a great phrase that I love, which is your lack of foresight of planning doesn't constitute a crisis on my behalf. Right? So
That's a great one.
basically, don't ring me at 4:30 on Christmas Eve expecting a whole new webpage to be put up, because it's not going to happen. Because the reality is, I'm probably on the terps at that point, having a beer, but the likelihood is, me and my team aren't sitting around twiddling our thumbs going, hey, we're waiting for you, John or Mary, to give us your work. We're just here doing nothing. Your business isn't like that. Their business isn't like it. Our role is to give services if you're like that, but we're not going to have slots open. We're in the business of selling time. So we're going to fill the time up and we're going to get on with it. So what both sides need is some form of schedule. And I would think most developers are a little bit like this. If there's a live crisis, you divert all your energy to a live crisis. If something broke online, WordPress did a core update, the site went offline, I'm losing money. Normally, in normal circumstances, we would handle that first, let other people's projects, tell them, hey, we've got a live crisis, we're dealing with that, we'll come back to your project. Anything outside of that should be planned. It doesn't have to be planned 6 months in advance. But if you have open conversations, if you're a developer, designer, have these conversations in the quoting phase. What's it going to look like afterwards? If you're the client, have this conversation up front. Hey, what happens once it's built? And say, okay, what's your hourly rate? How do you build this? Because people will do different things. Some people will do a monthly maintenance charge. Hey, you can get up to 3 hours updates, twiddles, whatever, for X many dollars a month. And other people, like my agency, we do an hourly rate. We charge by the minute with time and material stuff. So you send through a request, goes into our work system, and we do it. And at the end of the month, we bill out, you did 10 minutes here, 2.5 hours there, blah, blah. Yep. Here's the work list, and we send it out. Other people have the set fee, bang, bang, bang. They keep a record of it, but they benefit because some months you don't want anything. They don't roll the hours over, whatever. And there's a retainer model. Like if you're working with someone doing emails and social postings for them and helping them, because some bigger agencies or developers do this stuff to help the online marketing, they might have a 10, 20 hour a month retainer where they're guaranteed to fulfill this. So there's a different expectation. That client should expect that if I'm going to get stuff every few days but there should be a schedule still. First week of the month, we typically do this and this, or every Wednesday there's a blog post goes out. Then the developer knows I need that by Tuesday lunchtime. Yep. And if they haven't got it, they're chasing them up. So
I think that the word you use there is expectation, and that's really critical. It's making sure that both parties have their expectations managed, and they're both aware of what the other expects and what the options that they've signed up for are. What are your thoughts on some of these? You've seen some of these third-party sites where there's a $60 free for all, as many fixes as you want.
WordPress support sites.
Yeah. Look, what do you think of these? There's a million I've seen pop up lately.
I think every service serves a need. These services wouldn't have existed if there wasn't a need. Now, everyone has a different budget level. I mean, I would suggest, and I'm not doing it from self-interest, say, hey, I think I did a video couple of years ago about how much should a website cost. And the truth of it is, if you have any form of offline business, you spend quantifiably more on your shop front, your warehouse, your marketing offline than you do. Like, go and get a bunch of business cards printed and deliver them. Go and get a flyer and do a letterbox drop for 10,000 people. And you're spending a heap of money that you'll question for online updates. So when you go into the web, just budget some decent money each month. Now, decent money might be $300 a month for you. It might be $2,000 a month for someone else. But do it based on the size of your business. Actually, just budget it in. And there's a couple of clients of ours that did this after they got to a point where they said, look, all of our growth is coming online. So they stopped a lot of their advertising in the offline magazines that they've been using. They said, we're just going to allocate that in our mind because we were spending it there. Then we'll spend up to that anyway. Now, I can tell you, 90% of the time, we never get anywhere near it. So it's not like everyone's just going to soak it up. Like, the web developer can't just invent work to do. But the flip side of that is if you say, I've got all these things to do, but you give them an $80 a month budget, well, that stuff's not going to get done. And I think most of those support sites, Edmund, I believe are for, I see them as an update and fix a leaky pipe type thing. Oh,
Yep.
there's all these plugins I want updated. I don't want to touch them. I'm afraid of them. Well, that's fine. That's the sort of thing that you get done. But if I want a new landing page done and I want it to work for my business, I mean, I should be doing it because there's some dollar benefit.
Yeah.
It seems silly to me that I want to get a really great landing page done for $50 that I'm hoping to generate 20 grand this year out of. Like that just doesn't seem sensible to me, but I'm just, like I understand what people are looking at. So I see that as sort of a fixed thing. But I would also go, if your goal is to be working with someone to better your online business, you would be better to come to some arrangement with your freelancer or agency to say, look, I don't have a massive budget, but I'm going to want stuff every month.
Yeah.
And rather than it being a surprise to me, can I have a monthly amount, bank up the hours if I don't use them, run them down if we don't, come to some mini retainer model. So if it is only $100 a month, but at least you go, I've got that relationship to call. And, when we had Brendan on for the legal exam, we talked about, have a relationship with your lawyer so that when you bring them, they know you and it won't cost that much. Whenever we get a new job on, we have to spend time, which equates to the client's money, to get to understand their website. Just because it might be a WordPress website, what theme has it got? How's it constructed? This problem you've got, I got to dig in and understand what's going on there. Now, it might just be a page title issue, but then I go, oh, they're using some really weird method to put page titles in. Now I've got to understand that. So 2 hours go by. But if I had that ongoing relationship, so 6 months later, something comes, oh, yeah, I know what that is. And it's a 5-minute fix.
Yeah.
And I send out some bills that are 5-minute fixes, and it seems daft to send out, an $18 bill or something. But,
yep.
But that's having that relationship. You're going to get more value out of it. So I would go back to developers and say, how can we work in an ongoing fashion at a budget that I can work with? And that helps you as well.
Yeah. And I think one thing that people should do is reset or change their mindset, in that a lot of times we look at the costs associated with the website and the upkeep and the maintenance and as costs, whereas we would bucket the spend on the yellow pages as a marketing expense, something to generate revenue. And I think that we need to reset that, because the reality is these investments are all about making money, right? Updating the website, creating landing pages. And like you said, if you have a relationship with the designer over time, with a fixed budget, they'll know your business, they'll be more effective and efficient. And so it becomes an expenditure that actually grows your business, rather than, it's just another cost that I'm trying to squeeze. And that never works, right? If you've got one person squeezing and
and then because what will happen is, you get someone that questions every bit of work you do as a developer. And I'm talking from a developer now. So if you have a customer, that seems really expensive. I just wanted some photos cropped, Well, it all takes time. And people don't say to the guy that comes to fix the poo-clogged toilet that's spilling over. They get the phone call, the husband's at home, he's not one of those handy guys, rings the wife, the toilet's overflowing, there's poo all over the floor. And she's going, well, what do you want me to do about it? It's like, well, who do we use? And you ring some guy and he does all this work and it's all gone away and it's all cleaned up, put together. No one says, $200, I didn't want that, right? That's like, it's all gone.
You're taking too long.
Yeah. So, but if you sit to him, dude, I've got $20, he's going to go, hey, see the hose out there? Shove it down, turn it on and wait for an hour. And also block the door, because more's going to come out before it fixes, right?
That's right.
And that's what will happen from your developer. If you have a history of challenging, that seems a lot, or I need this, but I can't do it. Can you do me a deal? Poor me. They're going to put you in the bottom of the queue. You're going to get the least effort, because why would they put up with that energy? Eventually they're going to go, you know what, we're not working well together. We think you're another developer. And that means you've got to reflect on it. I will say there was another thing I wanted to throw in there when we were talking about what you should ask. Something I've been seeing a little bit of in fixing up some sites late last year was WordPress custom work done by agencies where they give the site owner partial access.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't buy into this. I understand why. I don't want them just remove.
What do you mean partial access?
They might have an editor login, or they've got customized logins, so they don't get the ability to update themes and plugins properly, or they can't do everything. They can't control user access or stuff like that. Now, we talked about in episode 3, owning your own assets. If you have a site with anyone, if you're going to get it, in your agreement or your contract, make sure that you say, we will have full access both at a hosting level and administrator to the login to be able to do everything to our site. Whether we choose to do it or not is irrelevant. You can have the conversation. Developers say, yeah, but we don't want you breaking stuff. Well, teach me what I should not touch.
That's right.
But I want access. It's my website. I want access to it. Now, the only caveat there is if you're renting something, then you don't have the same rights. Okay?
Right.
You don't have the same to it, so you don't expect to get them. You're not going to get hosting access. You're not going to get other things. But most people don't have that anymore. So if you have it, you should know what full administrator rights are, and you should have it. And the trust should be there between you and your developer that that's what's happening and you can see everything, because I believe that's what you should have.
That's awesome. I've seen that as well. Mate, this was a really informative episode. I'm just to round up to what we talked about. We talked about the difference between a web designer and a developer, right? Understanding who that person is and what their responsibilities are. We also talked about the difference between, a lower cost and a higher cost website, understanding why those bigger sites cost more. And it's about that investment in planning and investment in getting things done properly and checked before they go live. We also talked about the different tools that people use and whether that will cost more and what the issues are with regard to those. And also we talked about things that the web developers can help you with and the questions, I guess, that we should be asking. You'll probably put together a list of questions as part of this episode's notes, about what they should ask?
I will. And I'll also throw in there that when you're working with someone, sometimes you go, I don't feel like we're working together anymore. Like, understand that difference between designers and developers, because as you get more complex, as your site evolves, your needs are going to change.
Yes.
Right? So you may move from, well, that guy was really good in the early days because my questions weren't real complex, to now I'm moving to this gal over here or this agency over here because I've got more complex needs and that person wasn't able to fix my problems or help me with them.
Yep.
But also understand price isn't always an indicator of quality, but sometimes it can be. There are awesome freelancers out there at hourly rate of this, there are agencies this right there. It's just got to meet your needs. So just understand, think about your needs and try to work out if they're happening. And most times the problems are expectations are wrong. So it's just set good expectations.
Awesome.
And find someone that meets them.
Mate, I really enjoyed that episode. I think people listening to this today will get a lot of value out of it. What do you reckon?
I reckon. Hopefully they will. Hopefully there's some useful info in there. Look, if you've got questions, you want to hit us up on the Facebook page. I'm happy to answer them. If you've got questions about something specific, if something you didn't understand or you want to go deeper in, feel free on our Facebook page, ask a question there. Happy to answer.
That's awesome. And that's it for today, I think. If you want to be notified when the next episode goes live, please sign up to notifications on our website at mybloodywebsitepodcast.com or subscribe to the podcast at iTunes. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review in iTunes. It really helps people find us and enjoy the content. Seriously, leave a review. We'd love it. We'll actually call you out in the next episode, the first person who leaves a review. We hope to see you next week when we'll continue this conversation about My Bloody Website. It's goodbye from me.
That's goodbye from him.